In today's watercolor tutorial, we're talking color mixing and paintbrushes, and of course, we're painting flowers. Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Shada, and today I have a watercolor tutorial for you. We're gonna take it back to basics and just have fun painting these really loose watercolor flowers. Over the summer, I released a lot of content relating to watercolor flowers and leaves. We did tropical flowers, autumn leaves, every watercolor leaf you'll ever need, and every watercolor flower you'll ever need. And those videos all did really well. And I'm gonna link them here because they've been really popular, and I've seen so many great images posted on social media where so many of you have said how much you learned from those videos, and the results were, they're always amazing. So what we're gonna do today is, well, those were sort of a little more detailed and we're gonna paint a peony or we're gonna paint a maple leaf. I really wanna kind of dial it back, and we're going to do these very loose watercolor florals. We're going to work through some different brush strokes to help you get in the habit of kind of painting petals and painting leaves in a really natural and relaxed way. And we're also going to work through a color palette together. We'll mix the paints up together. We're going to be working with these sort of peaches and burgundies. The colors really flow and work nicely, and I think that helps when you have your palette mixed up ahead of time. That can really help to make the painting process that much more chill and fun, and the outcome that much more thoughtful. So with that said, let's get started. Make sure you watch until the end of the video because I do have a watercolor giveaway. It's about time we did a giveaway around here. I'd also like to mention that our tutorial today is sponsored by Poster My Wall. Poster My Wall is a one-stop solution for content creation and distribution, allowing anyone to create stunning social graphics and videos without any graphic design skills. This is a free online app that creates professional, high-converting marketing content in minutes, and they have over 115,000 templates. If you're a small business or a social entrepreneur, Poster My Wall can help you market yourself effectively through the creation and distribution of quality graphics. Basically, they have this huge library of professionally designed templates for every occasion and any aesthetic, and they all come in a variety of themes and sizes, so there's no need for you to hire a graphic designer to help you with your marketing content. Poster My Wall is super affordable. They have regular per project pricing as well as a subscription option, and social media images can be downloaded for free without any watermarks. And there is also a free resize feature, which allows you to maintain an active presence on all your social platforms. For example, I could resize this graphic from a 1:1 to a 3:2 so that I could use it on Pinterest and Instagram. For myself, I found Poster My Wall really simple to use. This graphic took me about 10 minutes to make, and they truly do have a template for anything you can think of. So if you would like to try Poster My Wall, click the link in the video description and use my code for 30% off. It's Shada19 to get 30% off a subscription like Premium or Premium Plus. Let's start by talking about our supplies. I'm using hot pressed paper from Canson, 140 pound. You know, I get so many questions about supplies, so we're gonna talk about mixing our paints today, talk about brushes. This is my little Derwent pocket set. I love the colors in it, and I've been using it a lot, and I did a little color chart here so you can actually see they're just primaries, but they're good primaries. I've got these really rich, warm tones that I love mixing to create pinks and peaches, got really deep blues, cool greens, Payne's gray. So when you're looking for your paints, look for colors that speak to you. Most sets will have the primary colors, but are they your primaries, if that makes sense? We've got 2 glasses of clean water, some paper towel for blotting, and let's talk brushes here. So if you're curious about brushes, I always use pointed round brushes. They have a nice fine tip, but a big belly that holds all the paint. So I'm always using the same shape of brush, mostly. These are all the same, they're just different sizes. Now the first one is animal hair, sable, but these are synthetic. The little one actually looks a bit curved. I'll probably end up chucking it out. These are just some cheap synthetic pointed round brushes that I picked up from a local crafty dollar store. Here's another pointed round synthetic. It's just a better quality. It's from Micador. So basically what I'm saying is get some pointed round brushes in different sizes. They can be synthetic, they can be animal hair, they can be cheap, they can be better quality, but it's sort of your job as the artist to know when your brush is wearing out, and that's the real key. You want a brush that comes to a very fine point. Animal hair will last longer, but synthetic, you just use it until it's no good anymore, and when you're not getting those thin, delicate lines, that's when it's time to get a new brush. So what I'm doing here is mixing up a nice rich light pink. Now for this shade, I'm using a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, and a little bit of white. Basically, I'm mixing those first 4 block of colors together to give me this really warm tone. And as I said in the intro, I'm going to mix up shades that all sort of work together. I'm going to jump over and mix up 2 greens, a warm green and a cool green. The warm one has a bit of green and brown and yellow mixed together. And then the second one is the darker shade of green mixed with a little bit of blue and gray. I'm also going to mix up this very light sort of yellowy peachy color. It's just white and yellow mixed with basically with the pink that was on my brush from mixing up a little bit of the light pink and a darker pink there beside it. So a little bit of pink, yellow and white, and then I'll mix up a deeper red as well, some pink and red with a bit of purple and brown mixed in. The brown always kind of helps to dull the colors. If you feel like your colors are a little too Crayola, a little too bright, mix a little bit of brown in there. All right, let's start with a really loose rose. So I'm using the very tip of that pointed round brush to do these thin curving lines, a little delicate spiral that sort of breaks. And then you can see I begin to add a little more pressure to that brush and I drag it across the page and it gives me a slightly larger brush stroke. At any point, I can add a little more color to this wet area, and then I just keep going around and around, and the brush strokes get a little bit larger each time. And this is what's going to give us the look of this tight rosebud with these, many multiples of petals, and they're getting larger and larger as we work out in this bloom. And now here what you can see me doing is I've added a little bit of that peachy yellow color to my brush, and that really helps to make this loose floral look lively because the color is changing slightly, just the way it would in nature. Once I'm happy with the shape of that flower, I'm going to grab some of that warm light green and do some really loose leaves. Leaves are a lot of fun to paint. It's just 1 or 2 brush strokes using the belly of the brush and drag it across the page, maybe once, maybe twice, and then you can use the tip of the brush to refine the shape, to add a little point to one end or add a little stem. Okay, and then let's try doing another loose floral, shall we? This one is similar to the leaves, frankly. It comes together with these brush strokes where you're dragging the belly of the brush across the page once or twice in order to create petal shapes. And of course, 4 or 5 petals come together and you've got a flower. So you can see what I'm doing is just using the belly of the brush, and I either pull it towards me or push it away from me, and I create these really loose petals. There's 1, 2, and again we use the tip of the brush to refine the shape of that petal. Don't mess it about too much, but if you want to add a little width to it or change the shape slightly, you can. And I'll do another one up here. I start with 1 petal, then 2, just a few strokes of that brush, and then 3, and then we'll leave those alone. And if you only do 2 or 3 or 4 petals blooming out, it sort of looks like the flower is opening upwards. And then again, I'll just keep adding leaves. For this floral piece, the idea here is that I'm going to start simply, or I have started, on the left-hand side of the page, and I'm just going to work from left to right, and I'm going to do a sort of arc of flowers and leaves and just go across the page and paint whatever I feel like. I've got my colors mixed up, and now I just want to have fun and create something pretty. And I may at any point do some smaller leaves. You can see these ones are seeping out into that wet area a bit, so just keeping everything very loose. Next, I'm going to use that peachy tone to paint another rose. So I'm using the tip of the brush to do that spiral and then adding a bit of pressure to my brush strokes, and they get a little larger as I move outward. So this is the key with that pointed round brush. You can do detail work, very fine areas, and then you can use the point or use the belly to do larger swashes of color. And what I will do in a sec here is I'm going to release a bit more color into the wet area. So a little bit of wet into wet is great for loose florals. I've picked up that pink and I'm going to use the tip of the brush to just do some little curving lines and release that pink into the wet area. And it bleeds out really naturally and really beautifully. So we're letting the paints do all the work for us and we're just chilling. We're just taking it easy here. These flowers do not need to be perfect. They don't really look like real flowers. It's not a photo. This painting is supposed to be so loose, and it's really just all about having fun with the paints. So here, because that first flower is still wet, I'm going to do the opposite and take the pink tone and do the flower in pink, and then I can release a little bit of the peachy color into it. So all these colors work really well together, and just do a little bit of that wet into wet to darken the center, and it just, the look is so pretty, and the watercolors do all of that for you. You do have to keep working it when it's wet. You can't let it dry, but you'll get the hang of that as you paint. I think the wet into wet technique really comes. And just do those leaves with 1 or 2 brush strokes, maybe release a little pigment into them, and just let that paint seep out naturally. You can see here I use the tip of the brush for the branch and use the belly and run it across the page to make the shape of the leaf. And then I'm going to mix up a dark purple. I'm mixing purple and brown to give a warm, rich color that's perfect for adding contrast to this piece. So what I'm going to do now is another loose floral that starts with a delicate stem, and then we just kind of release a little paint onto the stem here. So start with a line, and then we're going to just blot the brush lightly against the page and do almost a bit of stippling where we're just releasing color every which way, and you can do 2 or 3 of those grouped together or just one, and it's almost sort of like a lavender. It's a very vertical flower, and it's so much fun to paint. So all of these florals are really just shapes, and they're on the cusp of being abstract almost. We're just hinting at the idea of a rose or the idea of a poppy or a sprig of lavender, and really this is all about practicing our color mixing and practicing our brush strokes. And again, I'm just starting on the left and I'm working my way across the page in a little bit of an arc, so I sort of know where I'm heading, and I let all these colors work together. I let them bleed into one another, and again, I'm just letting the paints do the work for me. Let's do another rose together so you get the hang of it. Don't think of painting a rose, just think of painting a messy spiral. And this spiral starts very small and delicate and then gets larger. These brush strokes are just big round strokes of the brush where I'm adding a little bit more pressure. I'm going to put peach in the center. I've added a bit more pink on the outside of this rose, and my paints are very, very watery. A lot of this piece I've done with very, very wet translucent paints, and I think that helps when we're thinking about loose florals. And here what I'll do is I'll butt another rose right up against this one, and I'll let those 2 colors blend and bleed, and that really gives a nice effect. I'm adding a bit more water to my paint for the outside of the rose, and then a bit more pigment I'll add at the center of the rose. And again, that wet into wet watercolor, everything just bleeds and blends so nicely and naturally, and that's what these loose florals are all about. I'll sort of tuck some leaves right up in between these two flowers here, and you can see the green I'm using is very warm. And what I've done is I've used a green and blended it with a bit of either red or brown. Blending a bit of brown into your colors can help if you're finding they're a bit too bright, a bit too, childish or Crayola, or blending the color that is opposite on the color wheel. So the opposite of green is red. So if I blend red into my green, I get a more subdued hue. And I'm just continuing to paint my super loose florals, a couple petals, a little wet into wet, keeping everything simple and fun. And then you can see that my arc of flowers is coming together. I've almost filled the page. So at this point, if you like, you can do a little bit of wet on dry. We've been doing all this wet into wet and letting the paints kind of do their thing. Well, now if you want to, you can take some darker colors and begin to add some detail, like some little lines at the center of some of these florals can represent a stamen in the middle of the flower. Adding a bit of color to the spiral at the center of the rose if you feel like they need it. Once everything's dry, you've got the control and you can do that. Some of the stamens I'll actually get a little bit detailed, like this one. I do a circle of little lines fanning out from the center, and then I add all these little dots to them. So that gives me a nice detailed stamen that really brings this flower to life. So just get as detailed as you are comfortable with. You could just do some vertical lines, or you can add all these little dots and kind of have fun with it. It's totally up to you. And then I kind of just want to step back from the piece and say, okay, where do I need another flower? Where can I tuck another leaf? Obviously, I have this gap in the middle here that I need to fill. I'm doing some smaller flowers. You don't want all of your florals to be the same size. Basically, we've done 3 different styles of flower, but by changing the size and changing the color, we get a really dynamic piece. And I'll just keep going here and filling everything in, simple leaves and simple flowers. And yeah, I'm almost done with my very loose floral exercise. I think I just need to tuck some leaves in here so that I have a bit of green through the center of the piece as well, instead of just on the perimeter. And you can see I'm still doing some wet into wet. And I'm using my synthetic pointed round brush at this point. Grab the smaller brush to help me get some of the detail work done. And I've used the darker green here to add some small leaves. So same thing with the leaves. By varying the size of them and the color, you can really add some interest to your overall piece. So you don't need to come up with a bunch of different flowers and leaves. Just mix a few different colors, do things a slightly different size or a slightly different shape, and you can do a lot with a little. Remember, this is a practice piece. Things don't need to be perfect. I'm coming back in and adding a little bit of veining to some of the leaves, still using quite a translucent paint, but I'll darken areas and just adding that bit of contrast. It really brings the piece to life and helps you finish it off. Once those stamens that we added in the center have dried, you can also add a little bit of darker paint at the center of some of the flowers. And again, a little bit of contrast. It really finishes the piece off nicely. And I'm adding a real heavy contrast here with some dark purple, adding that to some of the vertical flowers. And then I'll add some tiny little leaves over here, just on one side. And that is going to finish my painting. I am all done. I'm happy with that. It was a lot of fun to paint, and I hope that you've joined me and painted along, because these floral shapes are a great practice for your brush strokes. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's talk about the giveaway. If you would like to win a set of Koi watercolor paints as well as some Micador water brush pens, all you have to do is comment below and let me know what have you been painting lately. Then make sure you are subscribed with your notifications on. Winner will be chosen next Friday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.